the Quincy Apparel. So does anyone want to summarize the situation? And well, I guess I can just summarize it. So they started a company that would produce clothes for businesswomen that would fit right, but be in a cheaper model by making it themselves and being the direct dealer, right? So they can cut out the middleman to cut down on costs. The two founders, Wallace and Nelson. Wallace is the CEO and Nelson's the COO. And it seems like they're having some operations problems. They have a lot of inventory, a lot of returns. Their return rate's a lot higher than they projected it to be. They're running out of capital. They need more capital. They're running out of cash. But they're looking for a bridge loan from their current investors. They think so, and then they're debating some options on whether or not to cut sizes, right, or
to narrow them down.
Yeah, or to narrow the sizes down. So I don't think they should cut down the sizes, because that's like the whole point of the company was producing clothing that fit you right. So I think if they start cutting down on sizes, then it will really limit their consumer base.
Personally, I think that if they were doing it effectively, that would be true. But it said that there was like an outrageous number of returns that were happening because of fit. So even with their value proposition that they were offering, it still wasn't coming through. So I personally agreed with Nelson that for a time period, maybe they should offer a more generalized sizing method, but still offer a wider variety that does service tall, short, skinny, fat people.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I thought that they had a lot of, like you said, Alex, a lot of operational issues, and they really hadn't hashed those out. And so they kind of threw themselves into the deep end. We're saying, okay, we're going to do everything. Whereas maybe they could have kind of, introduced a few things at a time, really figured out the process and gotten their team on board, and then introduced more things as they go.
Yeah, I agree. In situations like this, I always like to refer back or examples to like In-N-Out. They just do a few things really well, like 1 patty, 2 patty, 3 patty, cheese, no cheese. I think a lot of companies try to do too much too quickly. So I agree. They had lots of operational issues. Like they hadn't even thought about like fabrics, and it was staining clothes pink or something like that. They had problems with like production. They didn't have anyone to oversee that, like quality control. So I felt like they had really good feedback from some of their invite-only events where they had really good adoption rates and things like that. But they probably should have slowed down and maybe narrowed the selection they offered and stayed true to their value proposition and gotten really good at a few things and then kind of widened their net a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that a big problem was that there were several people that they hired who felt like they were doing them a favor by being there.
Yeah.
And those are just not the people that you want to work for you. It said that she was managing by saying like, thank you for doing this for me. Mm-hmm. And that's just not effective. You need to surround yourself with the people who really want to make your company successful.
And I think they need to, it seemed like Nelson wasn't very good at running the operations. I feel like another thing they struggled with was getting not only the right people, but like qualified people in the right positions. If I were in their position, if I were in Nelson's position, I feel like it'd be a little bit demoralizing, but I wouldn't let my pride get in the way of failing the company. I probably would step away from the operations officer job, try to get somebody who has experience in a little more experience in it, because I feel like if they had somebody who was better at it, then they wouldn't have a lot of the issues they'd have, and then she could focus on something else where her skills were more suited.
Yeah, they just had some like weird quirks about they would go to Starbucks to fire people, and so like they would go to Starbucks for all their meetings. Like that's
just not okay.
Yeah, like they just seemed very experienced, and things took off, and they had a cool idea. They just didn't surround themselves with the right people, and they together weren't necessarily the right people to get it off the ground.
I just feel like in terms of they had a great idea, and especially with different sizes and stuff. But in terms of the people, this always makes me feel like if I would have a company, what would be the best way for me to like talk to people, or like to bring people in the team, because at some point I think they were trying to be like kind of friendly to people, and like nobody had a better instinct to tell somebody, hey, you really need to do this, or we really need this, and like the people they had, they were really not helping, most of them. And for them is at a point is, where do you stand up and put your foot down and say, hey, we really need this, or okay, this is what we really need to get done, and if you guys are not on board, I think we don't need you. So
yeah, I think we can all say in summary that people were fundamental to the success of the company. I mean, we think about last week's Harvard study of Yieldex, and I think they were very, very profitable and very good company because they're surrounded with people who know the industry very well, or who were on the side very passionate about what they were doing. And it seems like in this case study, it seems like everyone's kind of trying to figure it out. No one really knows what's going on as far as production or even the industry itself. So I think that just adds up to what it is at the moment.
So as far as the assignment goes, I feel like we've answered number 2 really well. It says, like, what do you believe caused the failure? Quincy Apparel. When it says in number 1, as a group decide which offer you will take, if any, the only offer that I thought that they were talking about was like to gracefully bow out, or to try to go into the investors. Or was I missing something?
Sorry, I'm looking at the group discussion page. I haven't looked at what the assignment says.
But as far as the two choices, that's what I thought they were with. One option was to get like a bridge loan, and the other was they had like 7 weeks of pay plus a week severance or something to gracefully exit.
Yeah, the graceful exit was them just running out of money and then giving their employees a severance package after Christmas.
So we need a unanimous, correct?
Yeah, so vote Nelson or Wallace. Who is right, Nelson or Wallace?
So let's see. Wallace was shutting down and Nelson was to get the bridge loan, is that?
Yeah, Nelson wanted the loan and to reduce the size or the sizes and inventory. I vote for Nelson's idea. Their projected earnings after tax for 2016 was like 18 million. That's, even if they can just if they make the appropriate changes and get the right people in there, I think they could do it.
To me, that's a big if, was getting the right people. I think the idea has always been great, and customers really latched to it and liked it. Up to this point, I feel like their execution has been pretty poor. So I guess that's the only hangup. And so I guess my vote right now would be to phase it out, just because I don't think that those two are the ones that can get it there. I don't think they've surrounded themselves with the people who can get it to where it needs to go. But if they were able to make changes and come up with some sort of strategy to right the ship, I think it could work. But with those two in charge, and just the way things were going, I would be more in favor of slowly phasing it out.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I don't know if they're the right people, but I think if there's too much going on in the business, then they won't be able to figure it out. And so phase it out. You can maybe save it, and maybe they'd be able to become the right people. But with so much going on, I just don't think they're the right people.
I also think that phasing it out is the right plan. Something that was mentioned at the end of the case is that where they are currently, they have enough money to pay back all of their expenses, to pay back all of their employees, and to make a graceful exit, which I think is really important when you're planning on shutting down a company, to not cut ties in a bad, negative way, because in the event that they ever want to come back in, they have a good relationship with these investors already.
So I guess we're because I said Nelson, but mine was with a stipulation that wasn't really laid out in the case study. So without that stipulation, just going with pure options, it'd have to be the phasing out, because I think you guys are right about them not being the right ones for the job. But does anyone disagree with the Wallace plan? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So how did Quincy end up in this predicament? Do they feel that did they fill a strong unmet need? Evidence? Does Quincy have a solid technology and operations strategy? So it has compare it to the Rent the Runway. And what I think the Rent the Runway did right was they got people from the industry involved and put the right people in the right places to get the company going, where Quincy Apparel really hasn't done that.
Yeah, I feel like they need to meet a lot more, because I think that they hired even somebody from like a TV show, a fashion TV show. I think just their production was very bad. In summary, I think there's one instance where they're working with a factory who was producing their clothes, and they told them it would be ready in a month, and they came in after a month and nothing was ready because a bigger client wanted a big order. So I think just production was really bad.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that they talked a lot about how they were trying to manage everything together, and then they eventually decided to separate their responsibilities and duties. But even that change, I feel, didn't really make a significant impact on the company. There was a lot of red tape where it mentioned one person would make a decision and the other would get mad without being consulted, and so they would try to backtrack, and those things just really hurt a company.
Well, I feel like, as once again, I feel everybody had a great idea, but everybody wants the best if you have a company, but it's kind of like they put in the trust in the people they were hiring, and the other ones who I felt they were not delivering. And at some point too, even as work, as me as being a supervisor, sometimes you could be like, hey, we're gonna do this, and somebody comes and is supposed to do something and they don't end up doing what they need to do, or just and it will leave you in a bad spot, especially if you really need an order or something. So they're relying on people and not keeping up on them, and not having kind of weird trust issues, as you said. Like it was not worth it if they were going apart and trying to decide, hey, you do this, I do this, and without making it happen, the company is basically not moving in the right direction or going nowhere.
All right, so give me a second. Hey, look out.
So under the group page, what are we on?
I'm going off of the group discussion page.
Okay. Which bullet point are we on? Are we on should the investors find the founders, or are we on the next one?
Oh, we didn't discuss that part. We just voted because I didn't really say that because we kind of talked about it with the other one, but I was going off of the how did Quincy end up in this predicament.
Okay.
What did they? I guess we kind of covered what they had to really succeed was their idea was a good idea, and they their business model they based it off of I can't remember the name of it, but they based their business model off of another company that's very similar to this, but for men's wear. So I thought that was like, they had an example, they had a lot of tools to succeed. Kind of compared it to Rent the Runway. Was the cash flow formula good? It's on Exhibit 6.
It was Bonobos, right?
Bonobos,
No,
yeah.
it's not Bonobos.
Yeah.
So is it asking us to go actually do the calculations on the cash flow? Or just to look at it and see if it makes sense?
Was the cash flow formula good? And then in Exhibit 6.
Like with their projections, because clearly it wasn't because of their gross margin percentage being significantly lower than what they wanted.
Yeah.
Some of these things are very oddly worded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's page 13 in Quincy Apparel A. Right?
So yeah,
number 6 is what they're going off of. Well, while we're thinking of that one, where the founder's a good fit, I think we've pretty much covered this, that they weren't a good fit. And then how about the team? We pretty much covered that too. Everyone just seemed like they were doing them a favor. And then if you had 6 more months of cash, could you fix Quincy? I think it's doable.
Yeah.
Like I think they got a good idea or in a good market, but it's all about getting the right people, aces in places.
Yeah, I think one of the first things I would do is get a CEO or somebody in there who knew what they were doing and actually had some industry experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern right now is that both Christina and Alex are fighting quite a bit. And to get that company going in 6 months, there would have to be a significant change. That I think
You have to give up a lot of control.
But what would be the best place to start? Let's say if they just put a CEO, what would be the best place to start?
I actually feel like Wallace has done a pretty good job with the CEO and getting investors and everything. I think where they've struggled has been operations and trying to organize. I think they're not having enough delegation of duties. I think there's just a lot on Alex, and it's hard for her to keep everything going. She's only one person, and she has a huge, her scope of her duties is massive. It's hard to keep track of all that. I think they needed to even if they would just have hired more people, to manage certain aspects of it, rather than, she could even stay in the CEO or COO as long as she had people to delegate those duties to. Besides, I think they hired her mom and her brother, but get people who actually are part of the industry involved in that.
I agree with that. And she, along with that, if she stays the CEO, she has to be willing to back off a little bit and kind of let them work because, they both had responsibilities, but they wouldn't get off each other's backs and they wouldn't really trust each other. And so then it just completely stunted both of their growth. So I agree with that. I just think there should be some space included.
No.
Okay.
All right. So, have you guys read the case yet? The end of it. So it just basically goes over the issues that Wallace and Nelson were having a little bit more. Wallace was stressed out because she didn't have anyone to go vent to, whereas Nelson had like a family and whatnot that she was, and a husband that she could go and blow off steam and talk to and get a little bit of support. That kind of put a strain on the leadership dynamics. So they hired fashion industry veterans in specialist roles that made bad decisions that hurt the company quality or fit and their margins. And then then they felt that the terms they negotiated with the investors weren't very good. So they felt like they had that they should have raised money from investors with deeper industry experience rather than the investors they went with. And then the company failed. And yeah, they tried to do just like online discount sites, and that didn't quite help it either. So they just didn't like and they also didn't like the 50-50 split. They didn't like that they had to have a unanimous decision on everything. Kind of made it hard to run the company.
Yeah.
All right. And then what are your top 3 takeaways?
think for me, one of the biggest ones is no matter how good your ideas or how much of a need it fills, poor execution and not being able to plan ahead can derail really almost any company. Like the clients and the customers were begging for this, and they had really, really great initial feedback, but just struggled right away because of how just how many things they didn't prepare for.
The takeaway I got is that the 50-50 split just doesn't work. Even if you're really good friends with somebody, you're going to need at some point somebody to make the final decision. And so even if it's just the 51-49, you just need something like that.
Personally, I took away a lot about like establishing a really set process. I thought it was really stupid that they prototyped their products with fabric that they didn't guarantee having later. So having just their processes really set in stone and having the things in line and strict contracts with the people producing their products, so that way everything does stay on track.
I think with this, I think business has to do a lot with psychology. I think it's even like a minor or major where it has to do with business and psychology. And I wish they would have done a little bit more research into like I think one of you guys mentioned In-N-Out, but having a menu that's really, really simple, but is very, very effective. I think that their idea for Quincy is really different, and I think a lot of women look for it. But so many varieties and sizes and shapes, I think just confuses people, and I think they would have done a lot better. And I think in any startup, any company, if we narrow in something that we're really, really good at and just go off of that. So I wish they would have just done that, and I think that would have been a big takeaway for me. Just in any market, I think just be very good at something specific.
To me, my takeaway was I felt like it gets to a point where baby steps needs to be taken, especially when starting something, step by step, and trusting it with each other, like having a good an understanding where both of you understand what's good and what's bad. And if I get an email and I have to show my partner, hey, this is what this is what happened last night, or this is what we need to change. And most of the time as starting, they needed to find themselves, basically find a better foundation for them to figure out what's the best direction to go.
I think the biggest takeaway I took away was with similar along the lines with McKay. The like equal split. I think you got to have somebody. You got to have an executive that can make a decision. Because with the 50-50 split, you're gonna have gridlock. Went to a non-commissioned officer academy with the Army, and they went through, and one of the major takeaways from that was just make a decision. Like being indecisive is the worst thing you could do in a leadership role. And if you have gridlock and you can't get past that, no one has the authority to just make a decision, then your company's gonna suffer because you're not moving forward. There's no progression. So I think that's probably the biggest issue I saw there is, they were too afraid of like stepping on each other's toes, or, and they couldn't come to agreement on how they should continue the business.
How would you do that? I mean, it's hard going into business with friends or family. That's why I personally don't know if I'll ever do it, because saying, well, I'm going to have 51%, you're going to have 49 may not go over well
with them.
I think it's something you got to go into just knowing like, hey, we need to like this is how it's going to have to be, lay it out, just say, hey, 'cause if we have this issue, I mean, you're going the wrong way. Like, I know it'll be awkward to be like my way or the highway, but like we have to have somebody or set up something to make it so there's no gridlock. So you can't, if you have 3 people, then, you can get a simple majority, but I think it's, it's something you got to address when you first start the company. You say, hey, this is what's better for the company. Somebody needs to have, if you're going to be the CEO in an executive role, you need to be able to make executive decisions. You can't have your hands tied because somebody has different ideas from you. Then there's no point in holding that role because then you can't make executive decisions.
Debbie, you said you wouldn't want to go with business with your friends or family. So my question is, who else is left to go business with?
There's lots of investment and partnering that you can find through schools, through different networks that I would consider going with. But as far as like my nearest and dearest friends and family, their relationship is struggling and suffering because of the choices that are being made. And that's just something I would never put my friends or family to.
Yeah, it's pretty common. My buddy, his dad owns a few businesses. He started a business purely for him to take over. And while he was getting established, his cousin started running the business while we were growing up. We worked for him. But the business was set aside, like basically set up just for Pete to take over. But it came down to the point after working for his cousin that he, as we were growing up, he doesn't want anything to do with the company. You know what I mean? Like he actually owns more of the company than the cousin who runs it does. But there's a huge strife between them. He doesn't want anything to do with the business because of that. It's, after saying that, I wouldn't want to do business with family or anything because they have just from his example, they have pretty big family problems with them trying to figure things out or having problems because of business. It puts you in a tough position when you have your livelihood at stake,
Yeah, doing business with family just always never really seems to end. I shouldn't say never, but rarely does it end smoothly with everyone peacefully getting what they want.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's definitely situational. I mean, I worked with my dad for a long time. Now I work with my brother, and I mean, it's really not hard at all. And I think for us it works really well. So I mean, I definitely understand. I think it's a situational. Depends on the business. Depends on your relationship before.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
That's really good, okay, because I agree too, because it depends with some people's situation. I mean, I don't believe like all of the families have issues, but most of the families does. So thank you.
All right. So do we want to write up this assignment now, or does somebody want to volunteer to write it up?
I would do it, but I have to go. I have a job interview right after this.
No, that's okay.
So I'm more than happy to do it later. But if somebody else wants to, they're not bad to do. The one this week's really not bad.
Yeah.
So have we decided which offer we'll take as a group?
I think we decided we're gonna peacefully ride off into the sunset. That's the consensus to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what they could have done differently. Hire like a CEO to come in.
Yeah, simplify their process, hire a CEO.
So it's just those 2 questions, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can write it up and I can submit it.
Thanks, Darby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there anything else anyone needs to cover, or any other questions?
Nope.
I think that's it.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I'll submit this link for the video, and I'll see you guys next week.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
thanks, guys.